Okay. All right. Well, again, Achille, thank you for joining me. And just some of the things we want to do with Aware and our consulting side is we ask a lot of our stakeholders, either in our movement or those that we partner with out in the mental health industry,
Yep.
some questions in general about mental health. So, as we know, Mental Health National, they have some research done, and we want to kind of get your comments, what you think, even just on the MHA Monmouth level. So the first question I have for you is, you know, with research that says wellness programs, they do have value, but are not enough for employee mental health because integrated culture and change would be required. What's your thoughts on that today? Agree, disagree?
I agree. I think there's a big push for mental health, and there's been a lot more chatter and a lot more talk regarding mental health. But I do think that some of the quick fixes that we're seeing are, I guess, lower level mental health, like workshops, or maybe we're seeing like yoga or wellness kind of programs starting to grow, starting to flourish.
Yeah.
I think that putting some programming in place or putting in opportunities in place, things like yoga, meditation, and maybe deep breathing. Teaching staff this is great, but it's at the very beginning of what really needs to get done more at a higher level. I think that companies would benefit and staff would really benefit from being heard, from being understood, having opportunities to share what their needs are and actually speak to leadership and be heard from leadership.
Yeah.
Um, that's what's really, really important. And it's going to vary from company to company. It's going to vary from place to place when it comes to what exactly a company should be doing and what leadership should be doing for staff to support them with their mental health. Because
Yeah.
needs vary.
Yeah, I mean, some of the common when I'm speaking to even some stakeholders or vendors of other providers, they always seem to say EAP is good, but it's not enough. And then it's interesting because what I do, she is I think of my days at Bank of America when
Mm-hmm.
I did have EA programs, and it kind of left me short, so to speak. I got somebody on the 800 number, but it was still sort of like it was limited, if you will, limited sort of engagement.
Right.
Um, Next question. What do you notice corporate America is doing since COVID? We'll say since COVID, in order to address mental health in the workplace. Have you seen anything different? What's working? What's not working?
Well, I think one thing for sure that is different that's happening is there's more attention to work-life balance. I think a lot of companies are being a lot more generous and flexible as it relates to work schedules. And that looks like, shifting people's work hours and schedules in order to be accommodating, as well as allowing people to work from home in order for them to have improved work-life balance. So those are some changes that I think are helping and are pretty helpful. A lot was highlighted during the pandemic, and a lot of
Yep.
companies were forced to have people working from home. And I think that what that did was that it also kind of provided an opportunity for people to really assess and really take a good look at whether or not everyone needed to be in the office 5 days per week, because they were forced to have everybody home, right? And
Yep.
there's some positions where you need them in 5 days a week. I know for us, we do a lot of outreach and we're helping a lot of individuals in the community. So a
Hmm.
lot of our outreach workers, yeah, they have to be in the office. And during the pandemic, we had to pivot and get creative and try to figure out ways to support those same people that we are serving from a distance. But now that we don't have those same barriers, we're back in person and we're doing what we have to do there. But then there's some other positions that maybe they aren't as client facing. They aren't in the
Right.
community and doing as much outreach. And it put leaders in a position where they had to kind of think about if maybe those specific positions could have more of a hybrid schedule where there's checkpoints and there's check-ins and there's ways to monitor production and productivity while at the same time providing the space and opportunity to have just a little bit more work-life balance. I think that that's one of the things that has gone well. One of the things that I think probably could continue to be looked at is just
Hmm.
relationship. The
Yeah.
empathetic leader is definitely one that seems to get a lot more productivity out of their staff, and that's the kind of leader that most staff feel drawn to, and
Yeah.
most staff also feel heard by. And I think that what I've seen, especially looking at my own leadership team, is that
Mm.
some of the staff that really, really felt supported they did have a empathetic leader who was their direct supervisor.
Yeah.
Um, and that kind of a leader is listening to, what's happening in their life while still maintaining appropriate boundaries, but they're listening,
Right.
right? And
Yeah.
then they're able to then, based on what they're hearing, make a little bit of adjustments here and there as long as it falls in line with company policy. But then that also puts that leader in a position to impact company policy based on the needs of the employees that, are working at this company, at this agency.
Excellent. Excellent. Great. Okay, good. So, and then our last question for you is, what do you think corporate America needs to do to improve mental health for their employees? I think you'll probably say, yeah, just like I said, an empathy, right? But is there any other thing else? I think empathy is a huge piece. I agree with you. What do you think America needs to do to improve it?
I think just really taking a look at the needs, as I mentioned before, but at the same time, allowing people's voices to be heard,
Okay.
um, giving people a space, even at work, where they're able to kind of express themselves, and share what their needs are, providing opportunities for them to communicate those needs openly. Something as simple as having an open door policy makes a world of a difference because there's a lot of things that the leaders are not necessarily aware of, that impact staff and impact the employees, and they will never be made aware unless they actually have conversations. So I think that it's important that as people are maybe more at that executive level, that they have some open and consistent communication with their direct reports, and that those individuals have open and consistent communication with those who report to them, because that's the only way the information is going to get back, right? So,
Yeah.
got to ensure that there's consistent communication, that there's opportunity for consistent communication, and then really paying attention to what's important to the employees. One of the big things we know is that people want to feel seen, people
Yeah.
want to be heard, people want their identities to be recognized. People really also want to feel comfortable in the
Yeah.
workplace. No one wants to feel like they're the only one. Nobody wants to feel like maybe they're not important, right? And sometimes they may feel that way if there's things that are happening in the workplace that maybe aren't just or aren't fair. So an example of that would be, maybe one staff person, as I mentioned before, based on schedules and based on position, you might have one staff person who does have opportunity to work from home and has hybrid opportunities. So their work-life balance seems to be really, really good, and their mental health now in turn is really, really good, right? And
Hmm.
then there might be another worker who maybe doesn't have those same kind of opportunities. It's up to the leadership to ensure that they're moving in a way that's just and fair, and that also doesn't impact productivity and doesn't impact the work that that particular individual is doing. You can't have two people in one department who have completely different schedules and completely different opportunities,
Hmm.
right? So just making sure that there's fairness across the board in those instances, and then really looking at the culture and the climate
Mm.
at the office, right? And really trying to understand, maybe are there opportunities to engage the staff better? Are there opportunities to improve team building, right?
Mm.
And the connections that people have even at work. As I mentioned before, relationship is important. Boundaries have to be maintained, but most of the time we're spending a lot of time at work, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And if the culture in the office isn't good, if the connection between staff and opportunity for staff to even kind of get close and get to know each other are not there, then it's going to negatively impact people's mental wellness. So those are areas that they can look at. How much time, how much investment have you really given to overall mental wellness? How much investment have you given to team building? How much investment have you given just to the culture in the office? There's some items that are required that we purchase, right? We need
Yeah.
printer paper, we need ink for the um, we need paper for the printer, we need ink for the printer, we need computers, we need laptops in order for people to do their job. But something as simple as making sure that the coffee room is always stocked. We got some tea, we got some
Yeah.
coffee, right? That makes a difference.
Yeah.
Making sure that we provide opportunity to do some team building outside of work, right? Covering lunch every now and then. Those are the little things that can make big change in the office. While at the same time, like you said, EAP programs are important. Not everyone has EAP programs or able to offer EAP programs, or there are different
Hmm.
alternatives
Hmm.
that you're able to do. Look at your PTO
Hmm.
and ask yourself if you're providing enough PTO.
Hmm.
Um, at the same time, how are people allowed to use their PTO? What are the rules, and are those
Yeah.
rules around PTO being communicated clearly to staff? Do you have a culture where staff feel like they can use it without having to be worried or punished? Or do you have a culture where they're free, right? Where they're free to use it and
Right.
they know that if I need a mental health day, so to speak, can I just
Yeah.
take a mental health day? Right. So those are some things that I think people need to look at, that leadership needs to look at in order to continue this progression. It's great that we're seeing some wellness programs and the birth of new wellness programs in different corporations and different companies, but there's still a lot more room for growth.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. Well, let's end it right there. Okay.